Destiny 2 is nearly upon us, and this week Bungie has unleashed the first public beta test for the game. This is John from Digital Foundry, and today we're going to take our first look at the game running on the PlayStation 4 Pro. Having already sampled Destiny 2 on a high-end PC at E3 this year, this test gives us an opportunity to see how Sony's machine stacks up. We'll look at some of its visual features, check out the resolution and frame rate, and compare it against the base PS4 experience. Oh, and this video was encoded at 4K, so if you have the bandwidth, be sure to check it out. Let's get started. To begin with, there have been questions surrounding the resolution of the game. Bungie has mentioned 4K in the past, but what are we really seeing here? Well, based on our testing, it would appear that Destiny 2 runs at 2160p or 4K, using checkerboard rendering to get there. That said, while the 2160 value is consistent, the game does use a dynamic resolution on the horizontal axis, which scales from 3072 up to 3840. It generally looks fairly crisp, but you will notice some slight blurring at times. It should also be noted that yes, the game does properly downscale when you're outputting at 1080p. Texture filtering though could certainly use a boost, as it's a little blurry at oblique angles. Also, while checkerboarding generally works very well here, we did spot some noticeable artifacts. Want to see for yourself? Well, if you look closely at select frames, you'll see obvious artifacts appear. Check out the pixelation around the gun sight here. This also occurs with particles. So yeah, there are definitely some limitations to consider, but in general, it's an effective technique, and only these extreme situations reveal that it's not a native 4K. On the base PlayStation 4 then, we see a native 1080p presentation, just like the first game. The leap from the PS4 to the Pro is significant here, but there are some things to consider. You see, Destiny 2 appears to rely on lower resolution buffers when rendering alpha, volumetrics, and depth of field effects. Now, this was also true of the original Destiny as covered in these slides here, but steps were taken to minimize visible artifacts such as sawtooth edges when geometry collides with quarter res alpha. In this case, especially when dealing with the volumetric lighting, sawtooth edges are unfortunately quite noticeable in many scenes. Look closely at the edges here and you can see what I'm talking about. Based on our comparison then, it seems that these buffers run at the same low resolution on both the PS4 and the PS4 Pro, so the sawtooth edges stand out a lot more on the Pro, where the rest of the image is much sharper due to the higher resolution. This scene really highlights some of the limitations here. If you look closely at the lighting around the edges of the characters, you can see a lot of visible artifacts present in this scene. Even from a normal viewing distance on a 4K screen, this definitely stands out. Now, over on the PC, we can see similar artifacts in play, especially around volumetric sources, but the resolution does appear slightly higher than on the consoles, with less visible issues. This leads us to wonder about the Xbox One X then. It's likely that it will aim for a native 4K resolution rather than checkerboard, but we're also hopeful that some of these lower resolution effects will be rendered at a higher resolution, more in line with the PC version. If Bungie is able to do both a native 4K and use higher resolution buffers on the Xbox One, that would be optimal. But if that's off the table, then we might prefer 4K checkerboard rendering coupled with higher resolution buffers. This alone would allow for a huge improvement over the PS4 Pro version. Fortunately, even with these limitations in play, this does not spoil the splendor of the visuals on display here. Destiny 2 is a gorgeous game all around. From its massive sense of scale to its brilliant use of color and lighting, this is a vibrant and beautiful game on all platforms. The beta includes two basic environments here. You have the tower area from the original Destiny, which is under siege for the introduction mission, and an area similar to the later missions in Destiny 1 with its huge sense of scale. They both look excellent in motion, there's no doubt about it. Some of the highlights on display here then include a great use of volumetric lighting. Despite the sawtooth edges in certain scenes, this is still a gorgeous inclusion and enhances each scene that it appears in. Particles are also properly lit this time and look absolutely excellent in motion. The pouring rain in this introduction sequence is tremendous and benefits greatly from the lit particles. We also see a nice bokeh depth of field effect used while aiming your weapon, which of course looks great too. Screen space reflections return and are used in abundance to help bring depth to many scenes, though the relationship between the reflection and the object being reflected can sometimes appear a little off-kilter. Of course, things like particles look great, as does the animation in general. Everything is very fluid here. Bungie games have always delivered great animation and a proper sense of weight without sacrificing controller response, of course, and Destiny 2 is no different. It feels like an evolution of everything that has come before in many ways. Also, it's nice to see that many of the cutscenes are real-time, just as they were in the original game. There was fear that this might not be the case after playing the E3 demo, where select cutscenes were all pre-rendered sequences. However, if this beta is of any indication, then the majority of the story sequences will be rendered in real time. And just for good measure, here's how the PS4 Pro version stacks up against the PS4 when playing back a real-time scene. The results, of course, are generally quite good. I'm a big fan of the motion blur used here as the spaceship zooms past the camera, for instance. It certainly makes sense that they would stick with real-time sequences for most of the story though, as that's the only way to include your custom character in the story. Okay, so Destiny 2 looks great, despite a few issues, but how does it run? Well, for the most part, the performance here is excellent. On PlayStation 4 Pro, we see a mostly locked 30 frames per second at this point, no matter how intense the combat becomes. It's a very stable and smooth experience throughout the entirety of the beta. I sampled all of the content available in this beta and ran into zero performance issues. Now, you might notice that earlier I said almost, and there's a reason for that. I did spy a few frame pacing errors now and then. Thankfully, this isn't like the original beta, which was rife with the problem, rather just an odd skip here or there. It's not something that we actually noticed while playing the game, but the analysis tools definitely revealed this to be a small problem. Still, the general experience is extremely stable, and stability is crucial to the Destiny experience, and it's great that even in this pre-release form, the sequel manages to deliver exactly that. So if the PlayStation 4 Pro is running so well, how about its little brother, the base PS4? Well, this is where things get interesting. For the most part, we're looking at the same locked level of performance here on the base system. The frame rate holds steady at 30 frames per second and battles play out feeling reasonably responsive and stable. No problem, right? Well, that's mostly true. But the base system can exhibit more severe frame pacing errors compared to its bigger brother in select circumstances. You just saw what I'm talking about there. Now, that doesn't look great, but fortunately it's rather uncommon overall, so we wouldn't be too concerned just yet. It is certainly fascinating that it does not occur in the same capacity on the PS4 Pro, however. Still, overall things are looking mostly solid, and for a game that relies on multiplayer interactions between platforms, it's nice to see that all users across a single ecosystem here can experience the game without significant frame rate drops this far before release. Oh, and the loading, it's also improved over the original game. You no longer spend a lot of time staring at the screen waiting for the mission to load. The game manages to minimize waiting while these animations play out, and the transitions feel relatively speedy. It's not bad. Overall, in its current state, Destiny 2 feels like a nice leap over the previous game, but there are still a lot of questions here. How will the game take advantage of Xbox One X, for instance? As for Microsoft's original Xbox One, we will of course be testing that as well, but the beta has gone live first on PlayStation 4, so we were able to get this video done first. So, having played the game on the PC, PS4, and PS4 Pro then thus far, I think it's fair to say that the results are looking rather predictable. The PC version with its enhanced settings and support for higher frame rates is clearly on top here. In some ways, playing with a mouse and keyboard almost makes the game feel a little unfair, since pulling off headshots suddenly becomes even easier. Behind that then is the PS4 Pro version with its checkerboard 4K output. It's a sharp looking version let down by visual artifacts around transparencies and other effects. Then we have the base PS4, which sits behind with a solid frame rate and a native 1080p image. In the current build then, none of these versions currently offer support for HDR output, something that we hope will become available in the future, as the high contrast visuals here would benefit greatly from it. The takeaway here then is simple: Destiny 2 is shaping up to be a very well optimized game across all platforms. The team still has time until release, but even at this point, the performance is excellent. And of course, we'll be looking at the Xbox One version here this week as well. One last thing before we go then, we also wanted to share some footage from the game's competitive multiplayer mode. The map included in this beta takes place within the same area as the available Strike, with its unique stone structures and atmosphere. It should come as no surprise really, but the quality of the visuals appears to be very much on par with the rest of the content. It looks and runs just fine. It also brings to mind another important thing to mention quickly: connectivity. This is still an early beta after all, and while we did have a few issues connecting initially, once in the game, performance was absolutely flawless. It's likely that huge numbers of PS4 players were beating down the doors to Bungie's servers, yet despite this, the connection never faltered. Not once did we run into any sort of issues that could have been caused by the game's internet backend. For an early beta, this is very encouraging and suggests that Bungie's excellent track record in this area will hold steady going forward. But that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. And until next time, this is John, signing off.